Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am Game Master Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video, I'm going to begin with a first glance at the core mechanics of Daggerheart. Now, what prompted this video was this past weekend, as many of you probably know, I attended the inaugural Central New York RPG Con, and it was a really great experience. I had an absolute blast. I can't wait till next year already, so I can go both days, fully both days. I will be there and and participating. Cut it short this past weekend because Sunday was Father's Day, and had to go spend some time with the family as well. No regrets there. It's had a great day once I got home, and spending that time, but met a lot of great people at Central New York RPG Con. Some for the first time, others I've met them before at other conventions and whatnot. So it was great to see a whole bunch of people, and I will be talking about that in much more detail during Thursday night's live stream. It will be Thursday at 6 p.m. and I'll be talking with Roger Rebitz, who is the coordinator of Central New York. But anyway, while I was at the convention, I was running Fallout, and the table next to me was Ken McFerrin, and he was running Daggerheart. And so once both of our games were over, I walked over to him and I asked how the session went, and he said it went really well, and I had the same experience at my Fallout table as well. And I told him, I said I did a recent video where I looked at the flow of the game, and I had a lot of issues with it, and I explained that I'm coming from a very OSR mindset, when looking at Daggerheart. And even though there are elements of the mechanics that I really do enjoy, I was having a hard time, and still do have a hard time, wrapping my head around a more narratively focused game system. And he said, he's dealing with various campaign frameworks, which I will get into when we're talking during our live stream later on this week. But he said that he's working on a campaign framework that will add some of that OSR element to it. So I'm really, really, I invited him immediately to come on my channel, and we can talk, about it. And we just made a Facebook friendship, and already reached out to him in direct messages, and he said, how about Sunday? And I put forward the time that normally I do my live streams on Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And and so that's a real possibility that will take place sometime on Sunday. I'm hoping 7 p.m. so we kind of stay in that block, but if it has to be earlier or later, that's where we'll put it. But I wanted to start going over the core mechanics and doing my first glance of the core mechanics. Now, I'm not going to get through all of these during the course of this video. I will probably just get through enough of them to bring the video around, the 30-minute mark or so, possibly even less. I want to kind of chunk these things down a little bit smaller so it's easier for you to view them. But enough of all that chatter, and I am going to move right into the core mechanics. And I will bounce around a little bit during it because I hit a reference that I want to go to a different page and go over that while we're in the moment. And so without further ado, let's jump right into it. So here we have the, I just had to switch my page over here. So here we have it, the core mechanics. This section explains the core mechanics of Daggerheart and how to use them. The spotlight. Anytime a character becomes the focus of a scene, they're in the spotlight. Even if many characters are involved in a dramatic moment, there is often one character leading the dramatic moment, often leading the action, sorry. This might be the PC pulling their ally to safety, the NPC haggling over the price of rare goods, or the adversary attacking with their foul weapon. The spotlight organically moves around the table as scenes unfold, but the mechanics of the game might also determine where the spotlight goes next. For example, if a player rolls with a fear on their duality dice during combat, the mechanics allow the GM to then spotlight an adversary to act against the heroes. On your turn. Daggerheart's turns don't follow a traditional rigid format. You don't have a set number of actions you can take or things you can do before play passes to someone else. Players should follow the natural flow of the fiction to figure out what happens next, bouncing the spotlight around the table to whoever it makes sense to focus on in that moment. However, all players should keep in mind who has recently had the spotlight and try to find opportunities to give every character a chance to act. All right. Here would have been a good spot to put a safety tool. Because a lot of times when we talk about spotlight characters, we speak about them in a negative light. This is OSR point of view again. So this is the player that always craves the spotlight, always kind of steps all over everyone else and wants the focus to be on them and their character and whatnot. And so there should be a specific safety rule in here that says, there's times when the game master should step in and automatically pass it off to someone else, or and they go into some of the options here where you kind of limit those times that they can do that, or how many times they can take actions, or how many times they can seize the spotlight during a particular scene. But anyway, I'll go into the optional rules here. So if your group prefers tactical play or structured player turns, you can limit the number of actions each PC has available to them at a time, all right, which is one of the things I was suggesting. Remember, this is my first glance at some of this. We recommend that you start with 3, but you can also increase or decrease the number as your table prefers. If you use this system, when a battle begins, every player places an action token on their character sheet to represent how many actions they can take. Players then act as usual, and each time they make an action roll or perform a significant action while in the spotlight, they remove 1 token from their sheet. Collaborate with other players to play around the table, making moves and telling the story together. Even if you have multiple action tokens, see if any other players want a chance to act before you spend more than 1 in a row. All right, once every player has used all their available tokens, players refill their character sheet with the same number of tokens as before, then continue playing. All right, I kind of like this rule. All right, I wouldn't even consider this optional. I would probably run with this right from the get-go and basically say, here are your 3 action tokens. And I think 3 is a good number too. And I also like the recommendation that you don't let them do more than 1 action in a row, or at least, unless everyone else is okay, with that more than 1 action in a row. Making moves. When you decide to do something in the story and the spotlight shifts to you, your PC makes a move, which you describe to the group. A move is an action a character takes to advance the story, such as talking to another character, interacting with the environment, using a class feature or spell, or anything else the character can do within the scene. Some low stakes moves automatically succeed. It's easy to open an unlocked door. But while heroic, high stakes moves often require a roll to determine the outcome. It's hard to break down a barricaded door. When you make a move and the result of the action is in question, the fiction pauses while you make an action roll to see how things play out. Moves in combat. Since Daggerheart is a collaborative and conversational storytelling experience between the GM and the players, combat has no initiative order, no rounds, and no distinct number of actions you can take while in the spotlight. Instead, fights play out narratively from the moment to moment, just like non combat scenes. The freeform combat gives players the freedom and opportunity to team up, respond on the fly to narrative changes in the scenes, and follow the fiction. If they aren't mechanically locked into combat, players might find it easier to choose a solution other than violence, such as having their characters flee from their opponents or come to the temporary truce with their enemies. Um, this kind of thing happens even with initiative systems. At least in my experience, as a game master, as a dungeon master, whatnot. Um, I have players all the time say, I know it's my initiative turn, but I'm gonna wait to see what else happens, and they pass up their turn in initiative, and that's a again, that's a fairly common thing because I have a lot of players and um, their characters have abilities or spells or whatnot that they want to use in the most effective way, and sometimes that means delaying their action in order to see how the situation evolves, and then before they lose their turn, and then they will cast or they'll do whatever they were looking to do to take that full opportunity. So yeah, it's like even if you do have an initiative system, you can, as the game master, tweak that on the fly. Like I've had players who were just completely out of position, not even roll initiative. All right, for this particular round, you're not even involved with this. Or if an attack is coming from a single direction and they're in a tight space, there's no reason for someone way back in the marching order to even roll initiative. They're not going to be involved in the combat for a little bit of time, perhaps even a round or two before they get there. So, um, moving combat around and moving initiative around or not having initiative and just going in the order that makes most sense is something that has been done a number of times. GM moves and adversary actions. PCs aren't the only ones who make moves. The GM can make a GM move. See making moves on page 149. I'll get to that later. GM moves can happen at nearly any time, but they most commonly occur when the PC rolls with fear or fails an action roll. Well, I kind of like that. I kind of like that where that will automatically, as soon as somebody fails a roll or as soon as somebody rolls with fear, that's when the GM will jump in with an action like a counter action to that. So I kind of like that. Typically, GM moves escalate the scene in an exciting and dangerous way. A new threat might emerge from the woods. The PC could be separated by a sudden cave in, or another similar action may significantly change the scene. When the GM is finished with their turn, play returns to the PCs. This creates a back and forth conversation as the story evolves organically between the GM and the players. I'm really liking that. That's great advice. Many GM moves don't require spending any resources, but the GM can spend fear to make additional or more powerful moves, such as using an adversary or environment's fear move. See the fear section on page 154. Um, I'm not much in the this space to say that a GM needs some kind of action points or some kind of a token in order to act. A GM can act whenever he or she feels fit. Whenever they see that the situation requires their action. Um, if players are delaying making decisions, throw a random encounter at them. Um, get them back on task really fast. And I don't need, like, when I used to run Conan 2D20, I had my players would gain momentum, but I didn't bother with Doom. I was like, no, if I want to amp the conflict up again, I'm going to do that. If I want to make the situation more challenging, I will do that too. I don't need some kind of an economy in order to do that. So anyway, I like the first half of this. The second half, when it talks about spending a resource, which they say it doesn't require spending a resource, I wouldn't even deal with resources for the GM. You make the decision when something needs to happen. When the GM has a spotlight, PCs can't use features that require spending resources or making rolls unless those actions specifically allow for it, such as reaction rolls or features that interrupt attack or damage rolls. Okay. The duality dice. Now, I tested this out a little bit in our last demonstration. So I'm going to gloss over a lot of this. So the core dice in Daggerheart are a pair of D12s called Duality Dice. Choose 2 die of different colors, or if you prefer, different dice sizes or patterns. One to represent hope and the other to represent fear. Your duality should easily be recognized from each other, at a glance. All right, use these dice any time you make an action roll. All right, so if you're rolling a white die and a red die, and your white die is hope and your red die is fear, if when you're rolling, let's say you have a target number of a 15. No, I'm sorry. Let's reduce that. Make it possible. Let's say you have a target number of a 12, right? And I roll a 6 on my white die, the hope die, and a 3 on my fear die, and I had a +3 modifier. So that meant that I met the 12, and I met the 12 with hope because my hope die was higher than my fear die. All right. Now I could switch that up, right? So let's say I had a +3 modifier, and I rolled the 6 on the red die and the 3 on the hope die. Well, I still met 12, but now I have a roll with fear rather than hope. All right, so hope, when you roll your duality dice and the hope die rolls higher than the fear die, you roll with hope. When this happens on the action roll, even if you fail, mark one of the hope slots on your character sheet, so you gain a hope every time you roll it. You might also gain hope for spells, abilities, and other events that happen during the game. Fear, when you roll your duality dice and the fear die rolls higher than the hope die, you roll with fear. When this happens on your action roll, even if you succeed, the GM gains fear, and there are consequences or complications that come from the action you were attempting. All right, critical success. When you roll the duality die and both dice roll the same number, that is a critical success. The critical success counts as a roll with hope, even if you would have otherwise failed because the total is lower than the difficulty dice. All right, the roll's difficulty. When you critically succeed on a roll, along with gaining a hope, you also clear a stress from your character sheet. Additionally, when you critically succeed on an attack roll, you deal extra damage as described in the damage roll section on page 98, which I probably won't get to during this video. Using hope. When you've gained hope and recorded it on your character sheet, you can spend it to power special abilities, clearing it from your character sheet when you do. Your hope carries over between sessions, but you can only hold a maximum of 6 hope at a time. So we recommend that you look for opportunities to spend it. Hope can be used in several ways: to help an ally, to utilize an experience, to initiate tag team role, or to activate a hope feature. All right, and then they go through what each of these are. So helping an ally, utilizing an experience, initiating a tag team role, activating hope as a feature. So I'm not going to go into too much detail there. And I'm going to go into using fear. As a player, rolling with fear doesn't mean your action roll fails. Instead, you face a complication or consequence. For example, your character learns only some of the information they need, suffers a counterattack from an adversary they struck, or encounters an unexpected danger or hazard. If they fail the action roll where they rolled with fear, those consequences or complications are worse. All right, evasion. Your evasion represents your character's ability to avoid attacks and other unwanted effects from adversaries. This value sets the difficulty for a roll a creature makes against you. Your base evasion is determined by your class, but it can all be modified by domain cards, equipment, conditions, and more. You get to describe what your character's evasion represents. Flavoring it in some way, you describe their actions. Take this opportunity to be creative, lean into the descriptions, and deepen your character. When an adversary misses them with an attack or other effect, they might deftly avoid it with acrobatic dodge or precise footwork, or disrupt the attack with a well-timed parries. They might even have a magical shield or enchanted object that wards off blows. Although these descriptions add to your character and the story your group is telling together, they don't change the normal evasion rules or give you special bonuses. For example, you might describe how your character uses a powerful burst of magic to redirect an arrow headed their way, but this doesn't mean that you can redirect an arrow back at the attacker and deal damage to them instead. So let me just do a time check here and see where we are at. We're around like the 23-minute mark. I am going to save going into hit points and damage and the possibilities of character death for the next video. Like I said, I want to keep these a little bit short, so I will go into that. Sorry about that. I will go into that the next time. So I am going to mark off, because I have the book right here in front of me, and mark off where I left off. And I will get to hit points and damage and possibility of character death. Probably not tomorrow, but by the next day, I should definitely have that done. So possibly by Thursday morning, I should have that done. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to jump in the comments section and whether you liked it or didn't like it. Let me know. If you if you have a better way of explaining something to me as I was going over it, feel free to do so as well. And I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen sometime soon, or at a convention. My next convention is actually not until September, so I will be at ShireCon, that is in Canaan, Connecticut, September Let me just grab one of the flyers here. So that is going to be September 26th and 27th. So ShireCon. I will be running Castles and Crusades. Tonight is Castles and Crusades night, for my player group. So we are starting a new campaign tonight. So again, ShireCon 2025. This is at 104 South Canaan Road, Canaan, Connecticut, and this is run by Tom Wilson, who does a lot of great stuff. And this is a great con. This is a really, really, it's a great venue. It's at a VFW, and it's great people, there, and the gaming is just phenomenal. There a lot of old school stuff, some new school stuff. So I'm looking to see. I expect, even though I'm not running Shadow Dark there this year, I'm running Castles and Crusades instead. I'll be curious to see if anybody is running Dark or possibly even Daggerheart. So we'll see if that's there. But it tends to be more old school stuff. So anyway, again, thanks for joining, and you all have a great rest of your day. And as always, keep on playing. Keep on playing these games. Expand your horizons. Play games that you have the opportunity to play for the first time. Definitely jump in on there. The rest of the week, I'm doing a lot of. I'm doing at least two live streams this week. I'm waiting for some new game materials to come in, and I'll be talking about those as well. And I've had a lot of people asking me to get back to covering Adventure Conqueror King 2nd Edition, and I will get to that sometime this week as well. So thanks for joining. Have a great rest of your day.